This is RetRead Podcast.
We take a deep dive into the Fear Street series
And review other books we've read.
I'm Serge.
And I'm Anna.
We're happy you can join us.
Hey, Ret Readers. Welcome to Season 2 of RetRead Podcast.
Yeah, we're excited to be back. We've got plenty more Fear Street books to review and other books we've read. Starting with today, I'm going to be talking about Coyote Tales by Thomas King.
This was provided to us by the publisher, Groundwood Books, an imprint of House of Anansi. So we want to thank the publisher for the book.
Yes, thank you very much. And this is really the perfect book for me. It's got the things I like. It's a short book, easy to read, beautiful cover. And what I really like about this one is how it takes an art form and a form of storytelling that is often thought of as old, musty. I've read many anthologies of myths and legends that have been collected. It reads like a kind of cruddy translation, and it seems so far removed from what we experience, unless you really put your mind in that state of mind that you get into when you read books like that. And I can do that and I can enjoy that, but what I can also appreciate is books like this where the story is something that is literally alive today. It is like a living, breathing myth that you could have just heard from the lips of a person that you know around a campfire. That's how this feels, reading this story. Like your grandmother could have told you these stories. So I really like that. There's 2 stories in here, which I guess might be my only qualm is that you only get 2 stories for your buck.
It is a book written for children, though.
Yes, and with that in mind, each story is probably just about long enough to be a bedtime story. What I really like about this also is the illustrations. The illustrations done by Byron Eggenschwiler. I hope I pronounced that right. And so beautiful. They really stand out. I'm also reading the book by the feminist press, Tatterhood. I don't want to sound too critical of the illustrations in that book, but I find the ones in Coyote Tales to be far superior. Really, really nice. All around a good pick.
Of the 2 stories, did you like one more than the other, or do you think they were about the same?
They're a little bit different. I've read a couple different books of North American and Central American myths, and one common theme that you see in these stories is the origin of the sun and moon. And this one is kind of a take on the classic moon origin myth involving Coyote in this case. Really appeals to me in that sense. It's a funny, whimsical little story. The second one is really the epitome of a trickster myth. It's got Coyote and it's got Raven, and they're both playing off of each other, really messing with everybody else in their own special way. That one's a little bit more funny, and the first one's a little bit more mythical.
Do you think this book would appeal to people who aren't as into mythology as you are?
Yeah, I think so. You don't have to be into mythology to like these stories. These are just nice little children's stories. It doesn't matter that it's Coyote. It could be Fox. It could be any trickster from any history or background. These things tend to be universal. And the sort of more modern retelling of it does make it more accessible and more universal. This book's for anybody. I actually gave this book 5 stars on Goodreads. Definitely worth it. A good solid buy. I was looking at some of the other reviews. A couple of people kind of just didn't get it. And so what I would recommend is maybe if you're not sure you want to get this book, just read some of the negative reviews on Goodreads and just see, is there something there that maybe would be a turnoff for you? I read through those people's comments. I didn't feel like the reviews were valid, so that's why I gave it the 5 rating. Normally, if the book has really big flaws, but I really, really like it, I'll give it a 3 or 4, and I'll acknowledge the flaws. The only thing is, I wish there were more stories. Maybe it's not a great buy. Maybe it's like a 4.5 stars, rounds up to 5, because price-wise, for the 2 stories that you get, I guess the illustration's really good. It would have been nice if the illustrations were color. I would say if this book was a little bit larger format and the illustrations, they use the same artist, same style, but just colored them, that would be definitely worth the $16. As it is, it's probably more like a $12 book.
Well, $16 versus $12, that doesn't make much of a difference for the protagonist in the book we will be talking about after the intermission.
Fear Street, the Cheater.
test was serious to her, but not to him. While he had nothing to lose, her whole future was at stake.
Welcome back. Let's get right into prediction accuracy. Anna?
So I said the story is obviously about a girl who cheats on a creepy guy. Maybe they were never together in the first place and she's cheating in his mind, and maybe he has serious issues. She cheats on a guy. He's not creepy. She is sort of cheating on a guy. Let's get there first. But most of it is wrong. One of the guys does have serious issues. I said the murder weapon is strangulation via bare hands. I said the murderer is a male. Yes. And the murder victim is a male. And yes, that is correct.
So I said it would be a house on Fear Street because there's a girl on the phone looking out of her window. And so you're going to get the typical Fear Street phone service gets cut scene. And then the girl was perceived to have cheated on the guy, but it's really hypocritical and he's really cheating on her. No, there's a phone service getting cut, but that scene on the cover does not happen on Fear Street, and the phone service cut doesn't happen on Fear Street, although there is a house on Fear Street. There's actually a murder in a house on Fear Street, so I was kind of right about that one. Murder weapon, blunt force trauma, murderer female, and murder victim female, I did pretty bad.
Yes, you did. So what happens in this book?
Just to give you guys a quick plot synopsis, this book is not about some girl cheating on somebody. Not really. It's actually about Carter Phillips, who is a girl who needs to get an amazing score in her math achievement exam so she can go to Princeton. Unfortunately, the only way for her to do so is by cheating.
She gets someone to take the test for her, but finds herself stuck in an arrangement that she can't really get out of.
She gets more and more desperate to get out of this never-ending deal that just keeps piling on and becoming more onerous, and there's only one solution that comes to mind.
Well, we've already mentioned her. Let's get into the characters, starting with Carter Phillips.
She's got silky, white blonde hair. She tries to do anything to please her father. She wins tennis tournaments. She wins school prizes. She always makes the honor roll.
Her dad is a judge. He goes by Judge Phillips in this book. He's a criminal court judge, and he's also a Princeton alum who expects his daughter to go to his alma mater. And in order to do that, she needs to get a 700 on her quote-unquote math achievement exam, but she's only getting 600s on the practice exams leading up to it. Currently, he's involved in a case of a gang leader named Henry Austin who's been arrested for murder.
Her mom is a society mother, and she's always going to fundraisers and benefits. Think Emily Gilmore from the Gilmore Girls.
And they live in the North Hills.
Like her boyfriend,
Dan Mason.
Dan is tall and good-looking, handsome face, straight brown hair, kind green eyes, and he's great at math.
He's pretty devoted to his girlfriend. I think they think that they're going to be together for the rest of their lives.
Moving right along, we come to Jill Bancroft, Carter's BFF. She's described as having long brown hair, and I guess she's in a photography club.
Yeah, she's a pretty good friend to Carter. She does anything her friend asks of her. Her friend wants her to do something that she doesn't want to do, but she'll do it just because her friend asks. That's a pretty solid friend there.
Next, we come to Adam Messner.
He's lean. He has a dark-eyed face under longish black hair. He's cute in a dark, brooding way, and he has an air of mystery.
This guy is that 90s bad boy persona that R.L. Stine has kind of stumbled with sometimes. I think in some past books, he's tried to make the bad boy, but they always kind of come off as a creep. This guy lives in a shabby house on Fear Street, and he kind of hangs out with a rough crowd.
And he's also brilliant at math, and he's in the advanced math class with Carter and Dan.
And finally, we come to Sheila Cross. She's actually Adam's girlfriend.
She's skinny with pale red hair.
She's not really the brilliant in math type. She's more from that tough crowd that he hangs out with. She doesn't mind getting into fights.
Due to the increased costs of running this podcast, here's a sponsor break.
This episode of RetRead Podcast is brought to you by No Fear Test Prep, where Shadyside students can turn to help them get into the college of their parents' dreams.
And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
In-depth plot.
It's an unusually warm March in Shadyside.
The book starts with the math teacher announcing that Saturday is the math achievement exam in Waynesbridge Junior College.
Carter got a 570 the last time she took the exam, and she needs to retake it if she has any chance of getting into Princeton. She needs a 700 minimum.
Right, according to her dad. She's freaking out. As we mentioned, she's only been getting like 600s on her practice tests.
So after school, she and her boyfriend head to the corner.
This is where you find out about their little cute couples game that they play, which is, which would you pick? It's a game where they pretend if they had all the money or resources in the world, which house, /car, /jewelry, etc., they'd pick.
And they're choosing from the houses that they drive by in their neighborhood, cars they see in car magazines, jewelry as they walk through the mall.
Carter's freaking out about her situation, and she makes a joke about Dan taking the test for her.
Dan doesn't actually take it as a joke. He gets really weird about it. And there's like this super awkward moment until Carter's just like, no, really, I'm just joking. And he's like, okay, well, I'm leaving.
It seems like he knows there's a darker side to her. As soon as Dan leaves, turns out that Adam Messner, who actually works at the corner, overheard the entire thing, and he tells Carter that he'll help her cheat.
But it's a quid pro quo.
Adam will take the test if Carter goes out on a date with him on Saturday night after the test. Carter needs to break a date with Dan in order to go on this date, but she just goes ahead and does that.
8 a.m. on Saturday, day of the test, Carter drives to a local state park and literally sits there for 3 hours before turning her car back on and driving home.
Adam calls to confirm the test completion and to set up their date. Doesn't he kind of prank her?
Yeah, he says, sorry, they checked IDs. I was caught.
Her whole life flashes in front of her eyes. It's ridiculous. But he's just joking, and they're gonna meet up in the old village. And Carter is told not to dress like a North Hills princess.
So Adam takes Carter to the Underground, which is a club with seedy-looking people. They end up dancing the entire time, and she kind of has a good time. This is not a scene that she's into on her own, but just being there in this situation with Adam, you know, she's sort of okay with this.
It's really funny because she's got this internal monologue going. So she kind of dressed down. She's wearing like jeans and a t-shirt. Given how seedy this club is, she can feel everyone staring at her because she looks like she just walked out of a Tide ad and everybody else is kind of grimy. So it's kind of interesting how she like feels really self-conscious there.
While dropping Carter off, Adam leans in to kiss her, and then he asks her about her plans for the next day. And she's like, oh, I'm gonna play tennis with my best friend Jill, and he's like, okay, I'll meet you there. And before she even has time to go, wait, what? He drives off.
She's kind of hoping that he's joking, but she's also kind of thinking maybe he's not joking. But as Adam speeds off, surprise, surprise, his girlfriend Sheila comes out of the shadows.
Sheila wants to know what's going on between Carter and Adam, and she says that she knows Adam has been seeing another girl for weeks, and she's onto them.
Carter better watch out, except Carter's like, yeah, that's definitely not me. I don't know what you're talking about. And we know it's definitely not her, so...
So it's the next day, Carter gets ready to meet Jill at the country club for their weekly tennis match, except Jill's not there, but Adam is. And he's dressed in his grungy, he's wearing jeans and a t-shirt, he's got this really old school wooden racket, and the security guard is not letting Adam in.
Oh, right, and he's wearing like running shoes or like some kind of like sneaker that's not a tennis shoe. So the security guard is obviously hassling Adam, and Carter has to talk to the guard into letting Adam in. And then
Jill comes in, and she's like, what is with Adam being here?
Right, but then Carter doesn't want to really talk about it, so she deflects by saying like, hey, why don't we play doubles tennis? It just works out because there's this snobby rich kid there named Richard Smith. He's described as being a guy too snobby even for Carter.
Carter and Adam win pretty easily, and Richard just storms off the court at the end.
Pretty funny, and in the locker room, Jill is actually telling Carter she kind of enjoyed playing the match, especially because Richard finally got his comeuppance. But she asks Carter, what's going on? Carter has to kind of just lie and say she ran into Adam on the way.
And as a good deed, she invited Adam to come with her.
Right, a good deed, huh. Carter thanks Adam for showing up Richard Smith, and Adam forces Carter to take another date with him on Friday. So now things are kind of escalating. There's just going to be one date versus like the test. Then it turned into date in the tennis match. And now after the tennis match, it's turning out there's going to be another date on Friday. And she's now going to have to break another date with Dan.
Well, it's Wednesday afternoon. The judge wants to know Carter's test results so they can call Princeton as soon as possible because admission decisions are being made that month. So they call the testing service. And Adam got her a 7:30.
Woo! Except for some reason, I don't know why, but Carter just can't feel happy about it. She's got this strange feeling gnawing at her that she just can't quite describe.
As a reward, the judge gives her a pair of sparkling diamond earrings.
Yeah, he hops in the car, drives to the mall to get them right then and there, as soon as he finds out the test score. It's like, hold on a second, honey.
Carter and Dan go to the mall the next day, and Carter tells him about her test scores. And then she breaks off their Friday night date in saying something like, my parents really want to take me out for doing so well on the test, and because of my dad's big court case, it's the only night he can go out.
Carter meets Adam in the old village again on Friday night, and they go see a horror movie.
So after the movie, Adam drives her to Fear Street to his house. It was a one-story house with a rickety porch stuck on the front. Except for a yellow bulb by the side door, the house was completely dark. He pulled the keys from the ignition and started to get out of the car. Carter made no move to follow. It was obvious to her that no one was home. She wasn't sure she wanted to be so completely alone with Adam. On the other hand, she was curious to see what his house was like, and she couldn't forget that kiss he had given her a week before. Would he kiss her again? She goes into the house. His mom's not home because she has to work nights. The living room was neat, but shabby. The furniture, a worn couch, a rag carpet, some scuffed wooden chairs, and a coffee table covered with white cup rings, reminded Carter of the furniture she made fun of in a mountain cabin her family had rented once.
They sit down. They might be sitting on the couch by the TV or something. It really doesn't go very far. Adam kind of wants Carter to set up a double date for his friend Ray Owens and Jill. And Carter thinks Ray and Jill are on two different planets. Ray has 5 tattoos and 3 earrings, and he's not smart at all.
So Carter starts objecting to Adam about this. He sort of just forces himself onto her. He starts kissing her. He pushes her against the wall. He holds her down, and she's struggling, and he's just forcing himself on her. And all of a sudden, he just stops.
Carter's really freaked out, and she wants all of this to be over. She's had enough. She asks him, if she sets this up, will she be free of him? And he says, it's possible, so might as well call Jill and see what happens.
Carter agrees to call Jill, and after a lot of cajoling, Jill finally says yes. I mean, she's super confused. She seems to be in a good place with her new boyfriend, Gary Brandt. And
Gary Brandt.
She's a good friend, and she says yes, but she just wants to know why, but she's still gonna do it even if Carter doesn't tell her because, Carter's her best friend.
Carter's kind of relieved that this thing might actually work out, but as she's hanging up the phone, she absentmindedly opens a drawer to find a gun. After a freaky conversation where Adam tells her that he doesn't need a gun to threaten her, Carter runs out of the house.
You never know when you might need a gun, Carter. Who knows? Even you might need one someday. Want to hold it? She gasped and pushed the gun away. Are you threatening me? I don't need a gun to threaten you, Carter.
So Carter jumps on a bus, and she rides the bus all the way to the North Hills and gets off a few blocks from her house. One thing she notices, though, is that when she's walking home from the bus stop, she's followed by an unknown car. And she's kind of wondering, is this Adam? How could he have followed the bus? He couldn't have possibly known I took that bus, or maybe it's Adam's girlfriend. She's really confused as to who it is that's following her. So Carter meets Dan for their tennis date on Saturday. Turns out that one of Dan's friends saw her at the movie theater with Adam. Of course, she just continues spinning those lies. She categorically denies it. Says she was at dinner with her parents, obviously, just like she said. Dan eventually believes her, or pretends to believe her, and they play tennis.
Well, after their game, Carter's in the locker room, and she bumps into Jill. And these kids are always at the country club. But anyway, so she bumps into Jill, and Jill wants to know, why are we going on this weird double date? What's going on? And Carter's like, no. You just need to believe me. There's a reason for this. Just be a pal and do it. And Jill's like, whatever. This is some real BS, but we'll do it. And she goes off to take a shower. Carter reaches into her tennis bag for a hairbrush, and then she ends up pulling out a heart with a note on it.
Careful, or you'll break Daddy's heart.
Double date time.
So they meet up in the old village at a club called Benny's, which is in a basement, and it's kind of a rundown dive club.
Carter and Joe meet up with Ray and Adam. Ray has this greasy hair that looks like it hasn't been washed in weeks, and Jill is just doing her best to be a good pal. She greets them politely, smiles, and sits down next to her supposed date, and then it just goes downhill. They all go on the dance floor, and they dance for a song. At the end of the song, Joe wants to leave the dance floor. Unfortunately, Ray grabs her and forces her to slow dance with him, even though the song that's on right now is a fast song.
Right, and all the onlookers are laughing at Jill, and Ray's still holding on to her, and Jill is sobbing and trying to get free and struggling. Carter rushes in to try and help Jill.
Well, Carter looks on for like a few seconds, and she like looks around at everyone laughing, and she looks at Adam, and she's like, why are we letting this happen? We need to go do something. And he laughs at her, and she finally just rushes in to help Jill herself.
But the onlookers start forming a circle around the three of them, and they start grabbing at Jill and Carter, and the band stops playing and joins the mob trying to grab at the two of them.
This gets crazy. So Adam finally comes over, and Carter's like, okay, he's finally gonna put a stop to this. And instead of helping, he's just like, oh, yeah, don't get them too dirty. They're North Hills princesses. Carter will do anything to make her daddy happy, so, you know, just keep careful, guys, as they're all, like, pawing at her, and he's, like, grinning evilly.
So Ray starts kissing Jill, while all the guys keep grabbing the two girls and taunting them.
It gets really intense, and finally, Carter just screams, let's go, we have to fight, let's go. And Jill just starts bucking at Ray and flailing her arms, and the guys get more intense in their groping. Carter ends up shoving Ray, and his head slams into a guy behind him, that slams into another guy, and those guys get pissed at Ray. A whole fight breaks out among the guys.
Yeah, this is like that scene from the movies. It's a drunken tavern. A guy gets shoved into somebody else's table and spills their drinks, and so they flip the table over and punch him, but then his friend jumps in to help him, and suddenly, before you know it, the whole place is brawling.
During the brawl, Joe and Carter get the heck out of there. Carter just jumps in the driver's seat and drives them back to the North Hills, and Joe is just literally shaking in the passenger seat and sobbing.
Yeah, because they almost got raped. It's pretty bad.
Once they get to Carter's house, Joe is asking for an explanation, like, why were we out with them? Why did we go out with them? Please just tell me why we did this.
Carter lies once again. She's just weaving this web of lies. She says because she lost a bet with Adam. She bet that he couldn't win a tennis match against Richard, and she was too scared to go out alone with Adam. Then Carter gets a phone call from Sheila, basically saying, I know you're out with Adam, and I will keep you guys apart for good.
It's Monday in school. After math class, Adam meets with Carter to talk, and he's like, you know what? We shouldn't see each other anymore. And Carter's elated. I'm finally rid of him.
Instead of dating, I want to get $1,000 in cash.
And if you don't give it to me in however many days, I'm going to tell your daddy about the cheating.
Carter goes to the old village after school to sell the earrings her dad just got her.
And she goes to Corelli's Antiques.
Carter gives Adam the money, and things seemingly are done between the two of them.
It's been several days, and Carter can finally take a deep breath of relief. She and Dan have a movie night at his house. He rents Batman Returns and Wayne's World from the movie place.
On her way home from her date, a car starts following her and tailgating her. In typical Fear Street fashion, she starts speeding faster and faster, goes up to, I think, 80 miles an hour, and loses control of her car. And then the car is actually trying to push her off the road. She's sure there's got to be Adam trying to kill her. Actually, the car manages to push her into oncoming traffic. She ends up in a hedge beside the road.
She got off really lucky. But when she gets home, who's there?
It's Adam, waiting for her.
And she starts freaking out at him, like, how can you do that to me? What kind of crazy psychopath are you? And he has no clue what she's talking about. He gives her this confused look like, listen, I have no clue what you're talking about, but you need to give me more money.
He wants her to steal something of her parents and sell it if she doesn't have the money. Obviously, they're really rich, so it shouldn't be a problem to come up with the money somehow.
She's already cheated on her math test. She's already lied to her dad and her boyfriend. What's stealing?
So if she doesn't give him the money by tomorrow, he'll tell her dad about her cheating.
And during this conversation, she just starts fantasizing about murdering him.
Dan shows up at her house the next day. Jill has been talking to him, and he's figured out about Adam taking the test for Carter. He tells Carter that she needs to stop letting Adam blackmail her and to stop giving him what he wants. Carter's response is to get her dad's gun.
Dan tells her to calm down. This is not the answer. And you know what? They will figure something out, but they just need to calm down and think about it.
After Dan leaves, Carter raids her jewelry box. After bringing it all to Corelli, she only gets $200. She tries shopping it around all the other stores, but none of the other stores will take the other stuff. So all she gets is these $200, which is not enough money. She goes to Adam's house to see if maybe she could give him this money. Before you see any kind of scene or interaction between the two of them, there's this very obvious break in the narration where the whole scene of her giving him money is skipped. The book just cuts to sometime later and she's heading home. You never really find out exactly what happens during that missing time. When she gets back to the house, Dan is waiting for her, but before they can say anything to each other, the doorbell rings. The police are there, and somebody has shot Adam Messner.
So the police question her. They say, someone says that your car was at his house today, and she's like, no. Dan and I have been studying all day, providing alibis for the two of them.
Dan knows that Carter is lying, and they have a weird interaction, and then he leaves.
He seems really like, oh, Adam's dead, and you sure you didn't do it? What's going on? And
Carter gets a phone call telling her that the caller knows the truth.
And the next day at school, people seem to be talking about Carter. Every time she walks by, there's a hush, and as she walks away, people start speaking again. Eyes are following her everywhere. Her best friend Joe just keeps running away from her. She's a social pariah.
Yeah, that tends to happen when you're caught up in a murder.
When she walks by, she hears whispers of murder. It takes a few days until people stop treating her like a freak, but most of the time, they're still ignoring her.
One night, Carter is home alone after her parents go out, and she hears sounds and footsteps from the basement to the stairs to the hallway.
And then she hears someone say, "Careful, or you'll break Daddy's heart." Carter runs to her dad's gun, but it's not there. She tries to make a phone call, but the line's been cut.
And this is when the guy catches up to her. He pins her against the wall with his huge hands. He starts to choke her. As she's being choked, he tells her that he was the one trying to run her off the road that night. She's about to pass out, just as the police break down the door and take him off of her.
It turns out that he tripped an alarm when he broke into the house, so that's how the police were notified to come. When they took off his mask, she has no clue who this guy is.
Yep, she's never seen him before her whole life.
Her parents rush in, and her dad IDs the guy as someone who works for Henry Austin, the gang leader that whole court case is about.
So basically, this whole thing is about trying to intimidate the judge, and so they were trying to get to him through his daughter. Surprise, it had nothing to do with her little cheaty cheat. Typical red herring thing. Carter gets a phone call the next day from Sheila, asking for $500 to keep quiet about the cheating and Adam. She has proof that Carter murdered Adam.
So she takes her sound system, like her Super Swank sound system has a CD player, an amplifier, a record player, and a tape player all in one. She takes it to Marvin's Bargains and sells it to them.
She gets exactly $500, and then she gives Sheila the money and takes the proof.
And the proof is a gold locket inscribed for Carter,
which apparently was left lying in the house at the murder scene.
The next day, Carter's on the phone with Dan, and she is freaking out because her life is just a mess. She doesn't want to keep secrets anymore, and she wants to tell her dad everything, and she wants Dan to be there as her moral support.
So they go to the judge, and she tells him everything.
And her version of events are, so she tells him that Adam took the math achievement exam for her, and that she murdered Adam. She did it because she was tired of being blackmailed.
So Dan starts to beg the judge to be lenient on her. But the judge says it's up to the jury, that Carter must pay for her crime and won't use his influence. He starts to call the police, but just as he's picking up the phone, Dan stops him and says that he is the one that killed Adam.
So Dan's version of events are, Dan hated seeing Carter so miserable. Adam was blackmailing her, and that was not okay. He was worried about Carter and also the Dan-Carter relationship because he thought they'd be together forever, but he could see that Adam's goal was to break them up in the end and have Carter for himself, and no amount of begging from Dan would keep Carter from doing Adam's will because she was so scared. Dan goes to see Adam.
Yeah, so he goes to have a talk with him, but the conversation goes poorly. There's a struggle, and Adam ends up getting shot in the chest. Suddenly, there's blood everywhere, and Adam is just lying dead there.
Dan wanted to talk to Carter about it, but the cops came, and Carter had ever given a fake alibi. And then Dan was just too scared to confess because he didn't want to uncover all of Carter's secrets. Well, guess what? Carter already knew all of this because of the locket that Sheila gave her, and she actually set this whole thing up because she already told the judge everything. This whole thing was sort of a test on Dan to see if he would reveal the truth.
This is basically what she and her dad had talked about the night before.
The locket that Sheila had given Carter as proof that Carter had done the murder, Carter knew that that was from Dan because that necklace was one of their what if game necklaces. Like that's the necklace I would want if I had the money to get a necklace. And because Carter didn't have that necklace, it could only be Dan who had bought the necklace.
That's right.
All's well ends well.
Because Dan ends up confessing and saying that it was him, the judge says, you know what? You're a good, kind boy, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that you get off easy. It was obviously an accident.
That Adam guy got the gun in the first place. It's all his fault.
So everything's probably going to work out okay.
He gets them good lawyers, he takes them to the police station, they're interviewed for hours, and that's that.
At the end of the book, they cut to a scene where the judge comes to talk to Carter. He apologizes to her for putting so much pressure on her to perform well and get into Princeton.
She's the real victim in all of this, after all. And Carter and Dan play a game of chess, and she doesn't cheat.
I guess she learned her lesson, huh?
The end. Callbacks.
Yeah, so we got Gary Brandt over here. This guy's the male Suki Thomas. He's got yet another girlfriend in this one.
He's gone on 3 dates with Jill.
Carter's best friend.
Witness is being intimidated by getting run off the road.
Yeah, this is just like the overnight where some kids witness some nefarious business and the robbers are trying to run them off the road.
There's a lot of running off the road of teenagers in this series.
Oh yeah.
90s things.
How about that hi-fi stereo system that Carter sells for $500? It's got a cassette deck on it. You know, original asking price for this thing is probably over $1,000. Like, the only thing that you can get these days that has a cassette deck is a $20 thing at who knows where. Maybe not even.
I've seen a few of those in thrift stores, and they go for about $30 to $50, $60 maybe.
Yeah.
Less than $100 for sure. Cut the landline to cut the phone service.
Yeah, so nowadays we all have cell phones. A lot of people don't even have a landline.
Dan rents movies for a date night with Carter, which is very 90s. And the movies he rents are Batman Returns and Wayne's World, which are pretty contemporary movies for this book, so that's nice. Nitpicks.
We got this generic math achievement exam. It seems to be pretty much like the SATs.
Maximum score of 800.
Yeah, that's pretty much if you chop the SAT into 2 halves and you put the math half by itself, that's the achievement test.
So I wanted to say that March is way too late to take the SATs if you want it to count for admission decisions for that year. Because, as her dad had said, it's of the utmost importance. They need the scores right now because they're deciding this month. Yep. And that is, like, not a thing. But then I figured, well, he is an alumnus of Princeton. So maybe, like, legacy status. And also, like, maybe he has connections there still. And maybe his donations made it possible for that to happen.
I think it does make it easier, right? If your parents are alumni and they give a bunch of money to the school.
Another nitpick is they seem to be going to a lot of bars and clubs with drinking and smoking. But I know in New York State, people under the age of 21 wouldn't be allowed into clubs like that. And the only clubs that we could go to were like teen clubs where they didn't allow anyone over a certain age anyways. So there wouldn't be drinking or smoking.
And even like at really seedy places or quote-unquote seedy places, they still don't allow that. I've never been to a place where it's okay for a bunch of teenagers to just walk in. That just doesn't happen. It gets cracked down on. But we do live in New York State versus, you know, this is in Ohio somewhere. So maybe things are a little different in Ohio back in the 90s. This might even be a 90s thing. Maybe Ohio in the 90s was really like, whatever.
Money, money, money. And now, a word from our sponsors. Students in Shadyside, you have enough to worry about, from murderers to evil spirits from beyond. That's why we're here to help you with all your achievement exam needs. The school of your parents' dreams is within reach. Call 740-229-9618. That's 740-229-9618. But hurry, limited time offer. Services only available in Shadyside. Results may vary. We will not be held responsible for any criminal acts. Signees are eternally bound to the corporation. Anyone caught trying to escape the terms of agreement will be immediately terminated. Have no fear, we're here. No fear test prep. Fear Street Mythos.
Alright, so this one, I don't know if we can really get into the whole corporation thing, but we do learn more about Shadyside as a town. For example, we got the North Hills Country Club.
It has high walls to hide it from the public, so very few non-members know what it looks like.
Oh, that's a 90s thing, because now we got satellite photos of everything.
There's 2 heated pools, plush locker rooms, 10 perfect tennis courts, rolling green golf course. And then there's a Tudor-style mansion clubhouse with squash and racquetball courts and a banquet hall lit by a crystal chandelier with lounges filled with leather-covered furniture and a restaurant overlooking the practice green. And apparently it's overrun with teenagers.
Yeah, and this place is super posh. and exclusive. We learn a little bit more about Fear Street. There's a bunch of ramshackle old Victorian houses, but then there's also a bunch of new smaller houses, which are actually, by the way, this is from Carter's point of view. She describes them as run-down little boxes, and Adam lives in one such home.
So, we could go into more of the Fear Street mythos, but I know that Serge is chomping at the bits to get into thoughts on the book. I'll just, get a few things out of the way in terms of thoughts of the book, right? I think it's interesting that the poor people in Fear Street books are more often than not the bad guys. I think the only non-rich protagonist that I can really think of is Myra from Sleepwalker, because she did have to get a job to help support her family, and that's not something you really see in Fear Street books. The poor people in Fear Street, they're either seen as evil, or they're not seen as significant. They're seen as disposable. Haunted comes to mind as a Fear Street book where the poor person was really just evil and bad, and there's this scene where Carter is walking by Adam and his group of friends, and she's just making these judgments and talking about his group. And she says that most of the girls were in secretarial programs, the guys are in vocational programs, and they're on the regular track, not on the honors track. The girls are the type of girls who wear tight jeans and purple nail polish, and the guys, they care more about what is under the hood of a car than what's in a girl's mind. And then she has this fantasy about Adam, and this is all happening in one scene. So she has this fantasy about Adam versus the real Adam. In her fantasy, Adam's actually this brilliant boy from the wrong side of the tracks. He wants more out of his life than his friends, and he's living on the edge, and he just gets by with his charm. And he'll teach Carter things she'd never learn in her pampered world, but alas, this is not the real Adam. The real Adam is this ugly, horrible person who is a villain, and he's poor, etc., etc.
I really like the way you describe this fantasy she has. As you were saying it, I was thinking, wait a second, this sounds a lot like Aladdin. So is this R.L. Stein's rebuttal to the story of Aladdin, where you have this good-natured thief who teaches a princess about the world, but is actually a good guy? Whereas she has this fantasy that Adam's going to turn out to be this good-natured, street-slumming kid that teaches her the world, but he ends up being evil. Well, and R.L. Stein is saying princesses should not associate with street people.
Well, I think that's a very Hollywood trope, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned before when you described Adam that he was like a classic bad boy. And classic bad boys in movies are always a rebel with a heart, a rebel with a soul. There's more to them than meets the eye.
Right.
And she doesn't really experience that with Adam.
Right, this is a cautionary tale.
And another thing I noticed was there's this scene at the end of the book where it all comes out. The whole murder, cheating thing. Carter's mom just goes, "Oh my goodness, a murder? They're gonna drag us through the mud. Our names will be printed everywhere. They might even kick us out of the club."
She doesn't care that some classmate of Carter's was killed. She doesn't care that Carter cheated on a test.
And my last thought of the book on its own was that scene that we had mentioned where the judge sits Carter down and says, sorry about all the pressure. That's what made you hang out with this bad kid, and it's all my fault. It really paints Carter as the victim of this whole story, not really putting in perspective that a boy lost his life. Before I unleash the surge on this book, I do want to say this. Adam was a really horrible human being. He was complicit in the assault of 2 girls. Regardless of what Carter's deal was with him, that is not okay. Sexual assault is not okay. It's not a matter of how much money you have. If you're rich, if you're poor, that sort of behavior is never okay. We do not condone that on RetRead Podcast.
No,
Adam was a monster in many, many ways.
Yes.
But he did not deserve the end he got. And we just want to say before we get into that aspect of this whole thing that Adam's actions were pretty heinous. And Serge, what do you want to say about this book?
So again, we do want to reiterate here, none of the awful things that Adam did are really excusable, but what I want to go into here is that while those things are heinous, it's not exactly a death sentence that should be coming his way. It is certainly not up to either Dan or Carter to decide that. They are not the judge, jury, and executioner here. This boy is angry, immature. He's a perpetrator of sexual violence, I guess, or at the very minimum complicit in it. A bystander who did nothing and encouraged it, I would say. But at the end of the day, he's just a teenager growing up, making mistakes, just like those 2 are. What happens is that they get a second chance. They get this judge that goes, you know what? You guys are good kids at heart. You made a mistake, but you know what? You feel bad, so that's good enough for me. And the reason they get that is because they're rich. This girl, Carter, her dad's the judge. He loves her, and he's gonna probably do whatever he can to help her out anyway. And she figures out a way to make it so that he thinks that none of this is really her fault. As far as her boyfriend goes, they figure out a way to make it seem like he's really contrite and feels really bad about it. And apparently that's good enough that he can avoid any punishment. Did Adam get to say, oh, you know what? All those things I did to you, Carter, all those things I did to you were bad and I shouldn't have done them? No, he didn't get that chance. He got killed. He didn't get a second chance. If you reverse the roles in this book, and if you had the poor kid was the one that was getting harassed, the one that was getting sucked deeper and deeper into an agreement he didn't want to be part of, and it was the rich kids that were doing it to him, and then he ended up accidentally killing one of them, do you think justice would smile so kindly upon him? I don't think so. No, he would get kicked to the curb. He would get the book thrown at him. He might even get tried as an adult, because that happens sometimes. If the crime is serious enough, they will try you as an adult, even if you're a juvenile. If your lawyer's not very good, that could very likely happen in a murder case. These other kids, these rich kids, I bet they didn't even get charged with murder. It was probably manslaughter or something like that. They probably got off with community service or counseling or some kind of thing. There's a word for this. It's called affluenza. This was actually a successful defense used by the defense attorneys of a wealthy Texas 16-year-old. This kid got drunk and he got behind the wheel of a pickup truck. He gunned that pickup truck going 70 miles an hour down a 40-mile-an-hour road. There was a woman and her daughter who had a flat tire. They were broken down by the side of the road. A young girl stopped to help them change the tire, as well as a youth pastor. All four of them died. When this little piece of garbage, drunk off his butt at 16, crashed his truck into them. And actually, some of his friends were in the back of the truck, as I recall, and they got seriously injured as well. He actually, as happens oftentimes in these drunk driving accidents, he was unhurt. Yeah, so he was arrested and he was charged with vehicular manslaughter, 4 counts of it, plus the intoxication. He blew a .22, which is ridiculous, by the way. That's, in our state, I think it's .08, so that's 3 times the limit at 16. And I've seen video of this kid. The guy is a little shrimp. If he's blowing .22, he's blackout drunk. He is off his mind on alcohol. So, he has wealthy parents. They get really good lawyers, and the lawyers say, yeah, it's affluenza. He's grown up in such a wealthy, privileged lifestyle that he doesn't understand the consequences of his actions, and therefore, he shouldn't be held responsible for his actions because he's never been disciplined properly. Well, you know what? How about you start now? How about from this moment forward, he's in the justice system now. These are not his wealthy parents. So how about we judge him fairly the same way we judge everybody else? But that didn't happen. The judge was like, okay, yeah, you get to go to this posh rehab center. He got off. He got 10 years of probation, and he had to go to this rehab center. And last I heard of this kid, his mom and him skipped town and drove across the Mexican border. And he's on the lam somewhere down there.
They found him.
Oh, did they find him?
2 years jail time.
That's the thing, right? This kid didn't learn his lesson. Now, I think we have a similar situation here. Now, do I say that these kids should get some kind of really harsh sentence? Maybe not. Maybe there's some way to rehabilitate them, to make them learn their lesson. I mean, they are kids after all, and teenagers have really bad impulse control, it's known. They'll probably grow up and be more mature, but I feel like they're learning the wrong lesson here. And the other part of it is just the uneven application of justice. Why do poor people get a harsher sentence than rich people? Is a lenient punishment for a teenager such a bad thing? No, we should try to rehabilitate them unless they're a complete sociopath. These kids seem like they're maybe okay. But what I'm saying is if the rich kids get rehab and probation, then treat the poor kids the same exact way. Going back to R.L. Stine, Anna made the point earlier, if you go back through his books, the poor people are like the bogeyman here. It's always like a cautionary tale of if you're middle class or upper middle class, then God forbid, do not venture into the bad side of town and do not associate with those people because bad things will happen. This is yet another book where the scary thing that's on Fear Street is the poor person living on Fear Street. It's not the ghost, it's not the vampire, it's not the zombie living on Fear Street. Oh no, it's much scarier than that. There's somebody poor living on Fear Street in a box-like house. Oh no. The furniture is resemblant of the Swiss chalet we stayed at last winter. Seriously? I think earlier last year, in the first season of the RetRead Podcast, we were talking about maybe R.L. Stine is a little bit progressive with the way he writes his female characters. But now what we're seeing here is we're seeing that this is a very narrow, white, upper middle class book series. That's what I'm getting from it. In terms of the characters, I haven't seen any minorities. There are no black characters. There are no Asian characters. There are no Hispanic characters. We don't even get an immigrant. Nothing. That's basically where this series seems to be headed. And this book is so much so the worst offender out of all of them that is basically triggered me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the affluenza kids, except they're the main heroes of this book.
Well, like I said, they're the ones made out to be the victims. At the end, the judge apologizes for Carter. Oh, I can't believe that you were forced to do this. Oh, it's my fault. But it's like, this kid might have done a bad thing, but he didn't deserve to die.
Exactly. I think that encapsulates what I was trying to say, because the judge almost uses that same affluenza argument. Look, I as a parent have given you such a privileged lifestyle that you didn't understand the consequences of your actions, and more so than that, I was such an absent parent, and I put all this stuff on you, and I didn't even care to notice whether or not you could do it or what it was doing to you. Absolved her of any responsibility for her actions whatsoever. Instead of talking to her and telling her like it is. I mean, geez, you're responsible for the death of this kid.
Well, that also goes back to the mother's reaction when I read the part where she's horrified that they might get kicked out of the country club, as opposed to, this boy is dead. This boy is dead because of the actions of your daughter and her boyfriend. This boy is dead because your daughter thought the worst thing to come out of this was her dad finding out that she might have cheated on this math exam. There's that one point where she is being blackmailed by Adam, and she just imagines stabbing him and him dying. In her mind, bringing herself to tell her dad the truth is equal to a boy dying.
Yeah, when her boyfriend Dan first confronts her about it, her first reaction is to go and get her dad's gun. She's actually thinking about killing Adam. That is, like you just said, that is preferable in her mind to her dad finding out. She's not even like tracing out the consequences. Wait a second, if Adam dies, my dad is going to find out that I'm guilty of murder. No. It's the cheating that's driving her nuts right now. It's just mind-boggling. Dan and Carter are basically evil. Pretty much just not good kids.
Well, it's the idea that their happy bubble is more important than another human life.
That's exactly right. She's aware that she's in a bubble and she's very protective of it. She doesn't want to associate with the regular track kids or, God forbid, the kids that are
in vocational programs.
Oh my goodness. They're learning a trade? How low class. Her thought process there is so painful to read. I'm just not sure where R.L. Stine is going here with this. Is she meant to be a sympathetic character? Or are we reacting the exact way we're meant to react here? But the way he's written every single other one of his books, it's always from the point of view of a white, middle class, usually female character. It feels very classist. And I don't know if he's driving at something. Are we supposed to see how classist middle class America is in the Midwest? Is that the whole point of this series? Anyway, that's really how I feel about this book. The other thing I wanted to get into here with this book, I'm not going to because of the time constraints, and we just don't have the time to really delve into this. But if you look at that little time gap where she goes to give the $200 to Adam, the paragraph ends and there's like a few blank lines, and then it picks up a few hours later and she's driving back home. And we don't know what happened there. If you riff off of that and you say, Carter's not a reliable narrator, and what actually happened, there are probably... I've thought of 5 right now, alternate explanations for how Adam died and different ways of thinking about it. You guys can try this at home. Try to think about what he needed the money for, what the role of his girlfriend in all of this was. You think about Dan's motivations and you think about Carter's motivations, and there's probably an infinite number of combinations where you can rearrange all those different factors and come up with just a crazy different way that this all went down. You know, and it still fits into this storyline. You can plug it in, and at the end, either Dan and Carter get it wrong, or they both lie, or some combination of the two. And because of that missing time, and if you assume that Carter's not a reliable narrator, then it works. And I'm almost tempted to write a fan fiction from Adam's point of view, just to show what really went down. Because the thing is, like, yes, Adam is a heinous character. What he does to Carter is wrong. But what this book doesn't show from Carter and Dan's point of view is that Carter and Dan are actually really heinous people too. It just gets whitewashed. I think if you wrote this book from Adam's point of view, you'd see that all 3 of them are pretty much shitty teenagers.
Well, from Adam's point of view, he must see Carter and her friends as really snooty, really snobby people that need to be brought down a peg.
Yeah, and he says that. His motivations are pretty pretty clear here. And he just goes way too far. He goes way, way too far. He seems to genuinely hate wealthy people. And he genuinely seems to want to hurt them. And that's wrong. It's a very negative attitude to take. But I think there's hints of this. You don't really see it, again, because I think it gets whitewashed because it's from Carter's point of view. But I think her and Dan are also pretty cruddy people. They take a really negative point of view of people that are less well off than them. They're classmates. They really look down on them if they are not in the country club social group. And that's wrong. There's definitely another point of view to be explored here. How many diamond earrings would you give this book?
I'd actually give it 2 1/4.
2 1/4. Wow, almost 3.
No, it rounds down to 2.
I see.
As many issues as I have with this book, this is genuinely one of the books that had me gripped. There is genuine panic, and especially the scenes with the assault, that was really horrifying to me, and I feel like that was actually something that he captured well, just the fear in both Carter and Jill. I just felt so uncomfortable reading that.
Alright, so I'd give this about a single diamond earring out of 5. It was a pretty average Fear Street book. Definitely, you could sense the fear, just the palpable fear of Carter as she was frantically trying to keep her dad from finding out that she cheated. This is definitely one of the more thrilling Fear Street books in terms of that. It was really funny because we've had some serial killers, we've had some supernatural phenomena, and this kid cheated on her SATs, and she's probably more realistically frightened than a lot of those other kids going through that other stuff.
We've all lied to someone that we love, right?
Yeah.
And we've all had to just bury it deep inside and hope that this person will never find out. And the moment that you think it might come out, you start panicking. And I feel like that's something that he captured. I think we could all relate to the problem of, I've done something that I don't want someone to know about. It's this horrible lie, and she's gonna eat her up inside until she tells her dad.
Right.
And, you know, we've all been there, so we all know what the end game is, that she needs to tell her dad, but we're all with her for that ride. It's when it becomes, like, super problematic and classist that it becomes, wait, what is going on?
Yeah, I think I might be downgrading this book a little bit because of all those issues. It was a pretty thrilling ride until the glaring issues came up that I couldn't get past it, honestly. Especially at the end where they just got off scot-free. It was like, what? So, yeah, it got downrated a little bit. It might have been definitely might have been like a 2 earrings, but sorry, one of them got pawned off for like $200. Why don't we get into predictions for the next book?
So the next book is Fear Street, Sunburn, The Perfect Tan, or The Perfect Murder.
Oh my goodness, not another beach vacation. I'm so bad at calling these.
It is another beach vacation, and on the cover, you have a blonde girl who looks like shocked, and she's kneeling over the body of this brunette girl who's lying face down. There's seaweed hanging off of her. I'm pretty sure she's dead. We're at this sandy beach. I think it's another beach vacation. I'm going to say this book takes place in the summer. I'm going to say that it's just going to be a northeast beach. These are like Shadyside kids. At least the main girl is from Shadyside. The murderer is a male. The murder victim is a female. The murder weapon is going to be suffocation. And then their bodies are going to be left out in the sun.
All right, you know what? Third time's the charm, guys. Florida vacation. Here we go. They go to Florida, and these girls are going to be rivals. They're working on their perfect tan. There's definitely going to be a girl that's really jealous of another girl. I guarantee you. We're going to have some Shadyside kid for sure, like Anna said. And I think we're going to have a female murderer, female victim, and it's going to be drowning.
All right.
All right. Locked and loaded.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this episode of RetRead Podcast.
Join us again as we continue our journey down Fear Street.
We love hearing from you guys, so feel free to reach out to us at RetRead Podcast on Twitter and Facebook.
Email us at ret.read.podcast@gmail.com.
Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe.
Once again, thanks for listening. See you again soon.